All right, Salamat everyone. My name is Ahmed. I am Palestinian from Gaza, and I would like to welcome you all today to this really important and timely conversation with our guests, Tariq Hathaleen, Andrey, and Robert Martin. Today's session is titled Silencing Palestinian Human Rights Activists, the story behind the murder of Palestinian peace and human rights activist Awdah Hathaleen. This national webinar is hosted by Palestine Justice Movement Sydney, or PJMS for short. As always, PJMS is fully dedicated to educating the Australian public on the true reality in Palestine. Before I start introducing our guests and with this session, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we are all dialing in today and pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. This land was never ceded, always was, and always will be Aboriginal land, acknowledging that we're meeting today on a ground zero of a genocide that occurred more than 230 years ago, but its echoes still reverberate to our day. I am dialing in from Camaragal country. Again, I would like to welcome everyone who is joining us today, and I extend that welcome to those who are joining us from the dark side. In particular to those guests, I should say that all opinions expressed by myself today represent my own personal views as a Palestinian from Gaza who happened to live on this colony and who happened to have his family enduring the past 2 years of the Zionist genocide in Gaza. And anything I say should not be construed or misconstrued as me using any authority or agency bestowed upon me as part of my workplace. Now, on July 28th, 2025, Awdah Hathaleen, a Palestinian activist and consultant on the 2024 documentary No Other Land, was murdered in cold blood by an extremist Israeli settler in the village of Al-Khair in the South Hebron Hills, occupied West Bank. The murder was filmed by several of the village's residents and Awdah himself, showing the Israeli settler opening fire on the community and on Awdah. Awdah, which in Arabic means the return, left behind his wife and 3 small children, Watan, 5 years, Muhammad, 4 years old, and Canaan, 7 months old. This event is also a fundraiser for Awdah's young family. As the genocide in Gaza continues to unfold and intensify, one should not ignore the slow motion genocide and ethnic cleansing that is happening in the occupied West Bank in the background. Today's conversation is an attempt to highlight some of that. I am pleased today to be in conversation with Tariq Hathaleen, Andrey, and Robert Martin to shine the light on Awdah's murder and the Israeli continued aggression to terrorize the Palestinian residents of Al-Khair village and more generally, the West Bank, the occupied West Bank. This conversation is also a plea for us to act to enforce justice and accountability for the murder of Awdah. I want to introduce our first speaker is Tariq Hathaleen. Tariq is a Palestinian teacher and activist from the village of Al-Khair in the South Hebron Hills. Tariq carries the memory and friendship of the martyr Awdah Hathaleen, whose courage and sacrifice continue to inspire. Through teaching and activism, Tariq seeks to honor Awdah's legacy and contribute to building a future rooted in dignity, resilience, and hope. Welcome, Tariq. Our second speaker I want to introduce is Robert Martin. Rob Martin is an Australian activist based in Melbourne who went to Palestine to uncover the truth for himself. And what he found shattered the lies fed by Western governments and the media. Martin discovered Palestinians were not terrorists, but ordinary people, resilient, kind, and struggling for freedom. He witnessed the brutality of Israeli occupation firsthand. Soldiers attacking unarmed civilians, homes destroyed, communities terrorized. Despite threats, he kept filming, determined to show the world what he saw there. Rob, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be able to speak about Palestine, so thank you.
Thanks, Robert. And our last speaker is Andrey. Andrey X is a Jewish-Russian independent reporter and human rights activist based in the occupied West Bank. Since early 2023, he has worked with human rights organizations providing protective presence to vulnerable Palestinian communities under pressure from the Israeli army and settler movement. Andrey has been providing on-the-ground video reports from the occupied West Bank on his social media and through various publications. Please follow Andrey. Welcome, Andrey, to the conversation.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Right. So before we delve into the conversation, I really want to start with you, Tariq. I mean, we want to talk about the life and legacy of Awdah Hathaleen and your relationship with him. You were a very close friend with him. But before we do that, I mean, can you tell us what actually happened on that day where Awdah murdered? I mean, I had half a mind to share the video where it documents him being murdered, but I thought it would be too confronting for everyone. So tell us what happened on that day.
Hi everyone, my name is Tariq Hathaleen. Yes, and I'm honored to be the lifetime friend of Awdah, a very close, maybe the closest friend in his life. We're the same age and we grow up together and we studied the same school, went to the same college, and we both became English teachers. And we have lived every, single minute, second of this life together. Losing Awdah for me is a big loss. It's the biggest loss ever could I really, go through. Really, it's very painful. And what is happening, it is what is happening to all of the Palestinian people under the Israeli occupation. And we are in the village of Al-Khair. We have been suffering from the occupation since day one, as we are refugees ourselves. And we were transferred back in 1948 in the Nakba to the lands where we are now, in the village of Al-Khair. And the settlers have followed us later to come and live a few meters away from us. And this settlement that started to be, built on partially on our land, surrounding us from all around, they start working day and night on kicking us out of our village. As since October the 7th, the settlers have taken advantage of the situation and the international atmosphere to really kick Palestinian villages away from their lands and take over. It's the thing that is happening to us from day one. The settlement was built in 1980 and has been taking our land piece by piece until nowadays. This moment I'm talking to you is not something we are talking about as something that happened in history. It's a continued, work by settlers to try force us out of our land. And on the day of the 28th of July, that day when the settlement have brought an excavator owned by the terrorist, and I mean my words, Yanun Levy, this owner of this company that did the excavation for an outpost that start existing now in the heart of the village. And in the end of the day work of this excavation, the same excavator, the Hyundai excavator, start driving through private land, cutting the village through lands through and going towards the settlement gate, settlement fence. That's when the moment the community they stood against the excavator and tried to prevent the destruction and the destroying of the land, the private land, the olive trees, as the excavator was really running over everything. The olive trees, the fences, it's a garden, and it was destroying everything. It's actually didn't, ended up by killing Awdah. It started actually by hitting Ahmed, a lifetime friend of ours, me and Awdah, Allah yarhamu, and also a cousin of Awdah, cousin of myself. And Ahmad, he was the first person who came to try to prevent and stop the excavator. In that moment, this miner, this settler, teenager who was only 17 years old, we discovered later, he hit Ahmad with the boom of the excavator, throwing him to the side simply as a piece of paper. Because you can imagine how big this machine and hitting a human being. For a second, we as a community thought Ahmad was killed. And the natural reaction for that, the community stoned the excavator, trying to defend their beloved one, Ahmad, and their community member, Ahmad, who the community thought that was run over. Is not only thrown to the side, but even run over because the excavator continued. The community stopped the moment they discovered that Ahmad wasn't run over and he badly injured but still alive. The excavator driver didn't stop there. He continued going through private land when he, for one moment, came to destroy the fence that is surrounding this piece of land. And that moment, the community tried to prevent that demolition of the illegal demolition of the fence done by this miner. And in that moment, we saw in the videos, and one of the videos, Awdah himself documented his own murder by this terrorist, Yanni Levy, the owner of the company of the excavation machine, when he shot towards the crowd of people in front of him in a very barbaric way, that showing that he was intended to shoot and kill. He, in the video of Awdah, appears to look carefully for a second and shoots. That means that he was targeting Awdah, and he was targeting the crowd, and he was targeting the vulnerable, unarmed people, and to kill them. It happened actually the fact that he shot 2 bullets. The first bullet he shot, we saw in the video of Awdah, that hits Awdah in the chest. In the autopsy report, they stated that the bullet break through his ribs, through his lungs, through his heart, and came it entered from the right side. It came out from the left side, from the back, leaving Awdah bleeding on the ground as a slaughtered sheep. And sorry to really, put that an example, but that's what I have seen myself. And a community member with an activist were trying to revive Awdah, as both they were nurses and paramedics, but unfortunately they couldn't do much to him because it was a fatal shot by this terrorist. Awdah was later taken by the community a few minutes after to the ambulance, that they couldn't do anything, and they just took his body, and it happened to be an Israeli ambulance because we live in this so-called Area C that is fully ruled and controlled by the Israeli occupation, that only the Israeli police comes to this area, only the Israeli army comes to the area, only Israeli ambulances work for this area. And the ambulance took Awdah to the Soroka hospital in Be'er Sab'a city, and where his body kept, after the autopsy, his body kept for 10 days. It's even more, it's days more than the days that Yanoun himself, the murderer of Awdah, the killer of Awdah, he spent in jail. He just was held for 5 days for investigation, and he was released immediately by the Israeli court, that they know no justice, and they released the murderer. Not only released him to be free back out of jail, it's also to return at the 7th day from the murder of Awdah to the same place where the excavation was happening, which is right in the middle of the village, few meters away from our homes, to wander there to supervise the work and to continue. And Awdah's body was kept under unlawful reasons, pretexts by the occupation, that for security they don't want to handle his body, as they expect the community will. Unarmed people, what would they do? It's like, silly, excuses that they use for the Palestinians everywhere. They shoot someone and they say this was a security threat. That's the reality we live a daily basis here. So they didn't refuse. They refused at the beginning to release the body. And an act of nonviolent protest, nonviolent technique the community used. I was in jail, and another 21 members of the community, and we were taken to Awdah prison. And when we were released, we discovered that the women of the community, this very strong, women, that they decided to take a hunger strike to pressure and to make international pressure on the occupation to release the body of Awdah, who at the beginning said we will release his body just for at night and for 15 people to be at his funeral. We are not burying a thug or a thief. That was silly. And eventually, this, action by women, this hunger strike, brought its fruit, I would say, and results, as they released the body, and they didn't put any conditions on the numbers of the people who participated in the funeral. And he was released after 10 days. And we buried him and we honored him as usual, even though we had some guarantees by the occupation that they would not interrupt while the funeral going on, but they blocked the whole region. That made fewer number to come to his funeral. It was sad, but not the saddest. I mean, for this destroyed family of what happened, seeing Awdah shot, killed, his body was kept, his family member were jailed and taken to Awdah, not the main jail, it's the military jail inside Awdah basement, and being tortured. Myself, I was there and I experienced this really crazy, very hard experience, that the first time I experienced for myself to be in a military jail. Really, I can't imagine now the Palestinian prison situation in Israeli jails. What happened is a crime that is full of evidence, full of proofs. It filmed from different angles, from different cameras. Awdah himself, as a dedicated human rights defender and an activist, a non-violent activist, he himself filmed not only the crimes against his own people, but the murder of himself, which was really hard to live with. What happened have destroyed us, really. And I don't know, I'm always left with no words to really to talk about it. It's unbelievable what happened. It's really unbelievable. I feel that I still in dream. And sorry
It's
for
hard,
taking
it's hard
long,
to
and yeah.
characterize it. I mean, when you look at the treatment of the Israelis, the Palestinians, it's hard to characterize it as inhumane. Actually, it's beyond inhumane. I mean, look at what's happening in Gaza, for example. I mean, it must have been really, really difficult for you to come out and tell the story of your best friend, pretty much. So thank you so much for sharing, Tariq. I mean, Andre, I really want to, you probably knew Awdah personally as well, and you worked with him in Al-Khair. I mean, can you reflect on what Tariq mentioned as well, and also, I mean, these incidents that are happening, is it just a one-off incident? Is it systematic? Is it recurring? Like, what's your observation?
Yeah, I knew Awdah very well. I go around the West Bank. I try to spend time everywhere just to cover everything, because there's just so much stuff happening. But as I've told Awdah many times, and as I've told other members of the village, that Al-Khair is the place that I value and feel a connection with more than with any other place in Palestine. And a large part of the reason why was Awdah. And it's changed everything for me. It's changed, like, on a personal level, it's changed the way that I exist in Palestine now. And it's an incredible loss. And at the same time, in the Muhammad Al-Kurd's latest book, Perfect Victims, he talks about how, in order to earn the right to be mourned, a Palestinian needs to be either an extraordinary person or needs to die an especially gruesome death. And Awdah is definitely an extraordinary person, and he made waves both in life and in death across the world. In all of the world, across the world, we see his portraits being painted. We saw so much pressure on the Israeli state in order to release his body. So much so that the Israeli state relented, which is a rare occurrence. Usually, when Israel wants to do something, they will do it, and when they want to deprive a family of its rights, they will. Um, and you ask the question of whether this is a one-off or whether this is happening. This happens every other day. The reason we don't hear about this is because not every murder of a Palestinian in the West Bank is the murder of a Palestinian who is as extraordinary a person with so many friends across the world. Actually, on the same day that Awdah was murdered, another Palestinian was murdered in Al-Khair, just a few kilometers to the north. And that didn't make any news at all. And this is something that happens all the time. And unfortunately, it seems like Israel has discovered this pattern that if you kill an even number of people with even sort of breaks between them, you can't turn that into a story. Right now, Israel is killing between 100 and 150 Palestinians per day in Gaza. Half of that with bombings, half of that in just shooting people as they're queuing up for food. And you could, like, as a journalist, as a reporter, you cannot really turn that into a news story anymore because this happens every single day. And in the West Bank, with even like you have 2, 3 big settler attacks daily, and in general, maybe like 10, 15 settler invasions across the West Bank every single day. And you can't really turn that into a story. There was just a few days ago, like a week ago, I woke up from a phone call from my friend who was providing protective presence in the village of Duma in the Nablus Governorate. And she told me that she was just 10 minutes before she called, she was beaten up by settlers. They attacked her, they stole her phone, they pushed her to the ground, and then dragged her on the ground with an ATV. Her entire body is covered in bruises and cuts. And I was later helping her write a press release about it. And as we were writing the press release, as I was checking the group chat to find more materials, I saw that another friend of mine was attacked by settlers in the exact same place. And it's just you cannot keep up. You cannot keep up with the amount of attacks, pressure, all of this. And they know this. They're counting on it. Because they know that there are hundreds of hours of materials that are being recorded every single day, materials of very explicit war crimes that they're committing. And there is no way that we can report on all of it, and it's the same in Gaza and it's the same here. And what we're seeing is a tiny percentage of what is actually going on. It is the effect of the occupation is all encompassing, and it's something that is happening across every single place at the moment.
Absolutely, and it's really important to kind of point out the relationship between what's happening in Gaza and what's happening in the West Bank, and we'll delve into that a little bit. But before we do, I want to go to you, Rob. I mean, you've been to the occupied West Bank a few years back. You've, as I mentioned in your bio, you've seen with your own eyes, the reality there. You actually decided to go there and learn for yourself. And
Yeah.
can you reflect on that a little bit? And also, which is a really annoying and recurring question. And even as you say, your experience had been really revealing. Why should an everyday Australian, living half a world away, why should they care? I mean, the world is full of atrocities. We Australians have absolutely nothing to do with what's happening in Palestine.
Mhm.
But can you also elaborate on why should we care?
Well, I went, first of all, I went over there in 2014 and I met Mohammed Al-Kurd. He was a 16-year-old boy sitting in his house, at the front of his house, sort of contemplating the world. And I was lucky enough to sit down with him and have a chat. And I knew at that stage that he was a brilliant brilliant human being. He had filmed Israelis coming in on a bus, moving in the front of his home as a 12-year-old. That was his entry into journalism. So I sat there, and it just mind-boggling that he could have somebody from America paid to move into the front of his home, create as much trouble as possible in the hope that the Al-Kurds leave. I went and spoke to this settler, bright red hair, thick accent, horrible person. And basically, people will know of the Jacob saying, if I don't steal it, somebody else will. Well, that's Mohammed Al-Kurd's house. So it's been going on for so long. That is one particular scene that blew my mind. He's called an anti-Semite, which is so bizarre, because Israel claims to be a Jewish state. Everybody in there is either a jailer, a murderer, stealing his land, stealing his home, doing all of these things, but yet he's not able to hate them. How does that work? And that's part of the way colonialism works. That was one case. I went back there with Miko Peled. We were going to visit him. This was at a different stage. And all of a sudden, around Sheikh Jarrah, all the area was closed off. And Sheikh Jarrah is predominantly a Palestinian area. But the police and the security all came in, and they had either locked the Palestinians in or out. They weren't allowed to go. And as we walked through, I saw these these Israeli kids talking to this Arab, this Palestinian kid. And I've been pretty aggressive with him. And so we just started speaking to them, and they said that I was a terror supporter. I asked if they'd ever spoken to a Palestinian. They said, why would we do them? They're dirty animals, they're terrorists. And having these kids proudly in front of armed security telling me what they think of the Palestinians, and it's their land and they should leave, again, was eye-opening, because this is all within a square kilometre, not even. We hadn't even gone that far. A few days later, we walked around, and I was with Isa in Hebron, and Isa Amro was telling us, the different areas he can go. The street signs had been changed from Arabic to Hebrew. And then he got stopped at a particular area. There was no lines, there was nothing like that. But there was an area that the security said, no, you can't go any further. And they knew who he was because they see him every day. But yet they demonized, they talked down to him. They did all of these things that they do every day. And there was a young kid there with his curls, and he was proudly yelling at Isa. Proudly. And I said to Isa, I said, what was that about? What did he say? And he said that one day, Rob, he's going to come upstairs and he's going to kill my family and he's going to kill me. And as soon as he said that, he high-fived the soldiers. So what does that show you? That whole area, and as Andrey says, it is happening all the time. I was one guy. I went to Belin. Belin is a small village called, and it became famous by 5 broken cameras. And they took they went to court over the land encroaching. Bassem Abu Rama was a famous activist, peace activist, and everybody loved him. And he ended up getting basically executed with tear gas straight into the chest, and it killed him. And this is what they do. They need the high profile, they need them to go away. But then during the day, they'll also just get rid of all Palestinians, because what they want is Tariq's is one story. Tariq's one of so many different stories. It is riddled all the way through Palestine. When you sit down and you sit with a family, they've either got someone in prison, they've had someone executed, they've got someone that's injured. There's a particular area I went, and all of the kids were limping because the soldiers had decided to shoot them in the sciatic nerve. And so they were all limping. It wasn't something that was made up. And so the soldiers go out there with an intent. This is what we're going to do. Many years before that, it's systematic. Many years ago before that, the Prime Minister said to break the bones. And all the soldiers went out and they broke the bones of the kids until they broke one of the American ones. And then sort of things changed. And so it is systematic and it is horrible. And unfortunately, Tariq's sitting here and he's telling us a story about one of his most beloved people, but he will get blamed and demonized for the murder because Palestinians always get blamed. You're terrorists, you're this, you're that, and you're the other. Whereas this murderer, this instigator, this terrorist is allowed to come out and he will do it again. The only reason they've let him out is so he can do it again. This is what they do, and they continually do it. And unfortunately, yes, since October 7, they have geared up in the West Bank, in the occupied West Bank. The occupied West Bank does not get talked about enough. The occupied West Bank was bombed, but we don't hear about that. Mm. And so you've got Andrey and you've got Tariq and you've got people all the way through there doing the best they can. One thing that I couldn't believe is I was on the flotilla. I ended up going into maximum security, and then they took me from maximum security to Allenby Bridge. And I couldn't believe the amount of settlements I could see through the window that had accelerated unbelievably over the last maybe 7 years. And also what you will see, and Tariq will say this, you'll have a settler that decides that he wants to go and set up his own house. So he gets a car, he'll drive it up to the top of the hill somewhere. He'll then put a garage over his car. And this all of a sudden becomes the beginning of his caravan, the beginning of his settlement. Now, the government will say you can't do that, but they connect electricity to it. And this is another thing that they continually do on and on and on, and they must be stopped.
Absolutely. I wanna follow up that question with the original question that I asked about why do we care, but I want to go to Tariq first. Just elaborate more about who Awdah was. What is his contribution to his community? What were his concerns, and what's his contribution to the Palestinian cause as well? Like, I know he was very popular back home.
Yeah, so really sometimes when I get asked about Awdah, I find the words are short and limited even to really tell who Awdah was. Awdah was a father, a beloved activist, a human rights defender, a peace activist, and someone who dedicated his life that unfortunately was very short to raise awareness about his own people, his own community, his own cause. And by that, he made millions around the world to care about himself, about his people, and definitely about his whole cause and about the Palestinian cause. Awdah was an English teacher. And I remember when we both actually registered in university to study English major, and I knew the real motivation behind that he wanted to speak the language and tell the story and spread the truth all around the world. And I remember how he is a person that when he welcomes people, how emotional he gets, and he speaks from the heart, as what he is speaking about is the daily reality that we live. And by that, a lot of people, more than I can really imagine, that get inspired. They got inspired by Awdah, and they cared about Awdah, and they cared about everything related to Awdah. Awdah was a person that he had big dreams. He had the biggest dream when I remember when he got married and he had his first old son, Watan, which means homeland, and how he even chose the name Watan carefully to really describe his character, his personality as an activist, that he want to really change the situation by educating, by telling the truth about what is going on. I remember how he had the dream to raise Watan properly and take the best care as he could of his son Watan and Muhammad and Kinan, and how to fight for a better future for them. But unfortunately, this blind occupation supporting this terrorist shooting this bullet has taken Awdah away from us very soon, and he didn't get to complete his dream of fighting for a better future for his children, for his own people. Really, as I told, I find the words short when I talk about Awdah. It's the truth, really. It's not that I don't know Awdah really, but I don't feel that the words will really describe who Awdah was. That's the truth of it. He's, for me, he's bigger than words, bigger than anything. He's a lifetime friend of mine. We have done everything together. And for me, this is the biggest loss. And it didn't stop by, by Awdah. I mean, like, as Robert said, like, Yanun was left free to come, and he will do it again. He will do it again. And it's not the first thing that we go through. And that's not the only loss of our community, very small village that is around 200 people. Those very simple, Bedouin Palestinians who live and mainly depend on grazing goats and sheep. And as we lost now this, lifestyle of being shepherds because the settlers have sieged us from all around. We also lost Haj Suleiman, my uncle Suleiman, who was murdered at the hands of the Israeli police in 2022 when he was trying to prevent them from confiscating Palestinian cars. And the police truck ran him over, smashing his body, leaving him with severe wounds that he lasted only for 12 days in the ICU, the hospital, and eventually murdered, Allah yarhamu. I dearly and very badly, I miss Haj Suleiman, my uncle. I miss Awdah, my lifetime friend. They were pieces of my heart that were taken away from me. And I didn't know who will be next. And I am a person who can really understand how does that feel for the people of Gaza, that someone get to lose his whole family. I can partially, very little, imagine how it feels for those people, as I lost two beloved ones. But really, I can't imagine how they would really, live with that as they lose all of their beloved ones at once with one airstrike. I don't know. Awdah, as I told you, he's bigger than words. The true example on how great Awdah was, how true human, how really his action was, and his deeds were really great. The people that amazed us as a family, as a friend, the amount of people, the number of people who cared about him after his death. I knew that they would care about him in his lifetime, and now they care more about his story, and they want to know Awdah, and they want to get inspired by Awdah. And always I pray for Awdah, and the last I say, inshallah, may Awdah's memory be a revolution, and it shall be, because this is unjust occupation that continues to harm us and take and kill our beloved ones.
Absolutely. And in the face of all that, I remember seeing Awdah saying a couple of things. He says, if you want to live in Al-Khair, you have to have two things. You have to have patience and hope. And he had all that. And that's a message to everyone, to persist, no matter how hard the situation gets. But thanks for sharing, Tariq. It's really honorable for you to do that. So, I mean, Andrey, talking about the murder of Awdah, how is that incident or that crime relate to the wider aspect of the ethnic cleansing and land grab that is happening in the West Bank? And also, how do we tie it all to the current genocide in Gaza? You spoke a little bit to that, but can you also just give us examples and reflect a bit more on that?
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, I was asked in an interview, why is there no accountability for Yinon Levy? Why is there no punishment for the crime? Why is he free? Why will he be free? And this is kind of difficult for people outside of Palestine to understand, because to people who are not familiar with what's going on here, it's like, okay, a person committed a crime, there will be accountability for that crime. But what is and is not a crime is not an absolute category. What is and is not a crime is defined by the ruling order. And the ruling order that is currently persistent in Palestine, the Israeli ruling order, does not see what he did as a crime. It sees it as part of his overall, overarching, larger strategy of the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. To them, Yinon Levy is not a criminal. To them, Yinon Levy is a soldier. He's part of the machine, part of the mechanism that is aimed at the ethnic cleansing of Al-Khair, of the West Bank, and of Palestine in general. And this is, how does this fit in the larger scheme of things? This is the larger scheme of things is this. This is what they've been doing for a very long time, for over 100 years now, because this began even before the establishment of the State of Israel. The ethnic cleansing of Galilee, where the Zionist movement was buying up land and then expelling the people who were working that land. It began in the late 19th, early 20th century. This has been happening for a very long time. This has been a long-standing, persistent effort. This ethnic cleansing doesn't look the way that we may associate with ethnic cleansing. That doesn't invoke the images of Srebrenica most of the time, or of Rwanda, or of Myanmar. It's different. It's very slow, because they know they have all the time in the world. Because the settlement of Carmel, which is sitting on top of Al-Khair, was founded in 1980. And as Tariq said about their excuse for security, initially it was, they said that they need a military base there. They desperately need a military base there. So they took off half the land of Al-Khair and built a military base. And then a year later, they no longer need a military base, so they turned it into a civilian settlement. And since then, it has been the constant, process of very slow pressure that is now speeding up. But even before now, like the escalation began with the current escalation began with the latest election within the Israeli parliament, when the group of people which I would characterize as the Israeli neo-Nazi movement came into power. And then it's like they ramped up the speed of the ethnic cleansing in the West Bank. But even before then, when it was the sort of liberals of Bennett and Lapid who were in power within the Israeli Knesset, there was also ethnic cleansing in the West Bank. The ethnic cleansing in the West Bank has been happening since 1967 with practically no breaks. And what we're seeing now, this massive escalation, is something that they realized that they can afford. They didn't know they could do this. They thought that there would be pushback. They thought that they would be stopped, so it was slower. But now they found out that no, they can just do this. They can just come in and kill people. Levy didn't allow himself to do this before. He's personally responsible for the ethnic cleansing of several Palestinian communities. The village of Zanuta 2 years ago was ethnically, all of them abandoned their land, had to abandon their land because of constant attacks, because of an outpost set up by Yinon Levy. And then he came with probably the same bulldozer that or excavator that he used in Al-Khair now. He came and destroyed every single building in the village of Zanuta. And it's like right now it's just ruins. There's nothing there. And then once they were done with that, they moved on to the next place and the next place and the next place. Because Yinon Levy is an agent of the Israeli state. And the way that it all fits in is that, it's not a crime if it's done by the ruling order. We're not conditioned to seeing airstrikes as terror attacks. We're conditioned to see like children coming up with a knife to a soldier and trying to stab him. That we're conditioned to see as a terror attack. But when an Israeli airstrike kills several entire families in Gaza, that's not considered a terror attack, even though they're deliberately targeting entire groups of civilians. And Yeah, it's the overarching impetus of the not just of the settlement movement, not just of the Israeli army, but of the entire Zionist project is the ethnic cleansing of Palestine and the replacement of the indigenous population with what they see as the master race. And
And
this is
it's
just one story out of millions.
absolutely. And to your point, I mean, the Zionist ideology as a settler colonial ideology, it's all about land grab without people, because the the main mantra was a land without people for a people without a land. So they're actually applying that on the ground. You spoke about accountability, and Tom there is saying he likes the question at the end of that flyer saying, what are practical things that we can do here? For example, we're speaking to the Australian and probably some international people joining us in this webinar. What are practical things that we can do to achieve justice and accountability for Palestine? And I want to ask you this question, Rob, because you are in so-called Australia. But before that, I really want you to kind of hone in on that question, because it's really critical. And I can hear it everywhere when I go leafleting and flyers and so on and so forth. Why do we care as Australians living on the other half of the world? Like we're not, this is not close to home, what's happening in Palestine. Why should we act?
Well, it's a tough one. I say it's because it's the right thing to do. But I was blinded by our media. I was blinded by our government rhetoric. I just thought it was something that was too far away. I thought that the Israelis were, in the Jewish area was just trying to defend themselves, and that the Palestinians were terrorists. And so it was all too hard for me. Look, life's pretty tough for people. We find it difficult. We have our families to bring up, and if it's not in our face, we don't care. We're selfish, and that's the way it is. It's been a lot easier to say I didn't know until now, because you're seeing it. It doesn't matter what platform you're on, you're going to see something about Gaza. You're definitely going to see something about Gaza. You probably see stuff about the occupied West Bank as well. And I believe that if it can happen over there, it can happen here, and we have to do the right thing. If we're in a position that we can make a difference, we have that obligation to actually act and to do something. And I was so confused about what happened. That's why I went over. I didn't know where to turn or what to do, so I went over there. Which you don't need to do that today. You don't need to do it. At the moment, there'd be 1,000 crimes by Israel in the occupied West Bank every day. Whether it's a soldier at a checkpoint just not allowing somebody to go back into their own home, whether they're holding an entire school at a checkpoint, not allowing them to go back. These are all against their war crimes. And then you go into Gaza and they're knocking off, complete building after building after building. If you're okay with that, you should have a look in the mirror, because there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with you. And put yourself in someone else's shoes. What happened, if it was a family member or you knew somebody over there? You can make a difference. We're lucky over here. We need to use our white privilege that I've got, definitely, and that's what I started to use. Don't turn a blind eye, because if your grandkids or your kids ask you, what did you do during the time that Israel was trying to exterminate the Palestinians, and you said, well, nothing, you're not a really good role model, and you should be ashamed of yourself. It's just unacceptable. It's not how a human being should act. We have the responsibility. We have allowed Israel to continue on for far too long. For far too long. They're not an ally to anybody. They are not an ally to anybody. They bring danger right through the Middle East and to here. They are not an ally to anyone, and the Palestinians have been forgotten for too long, and they deserve the protection and the freedom that we can fight to help give them, because it's been too long as well. I mean, people like Tariq, their whole life they get demonized because he's born Palestinian, and the world's bought these stupid lies. And the Palestinians, they're the best people you'll ever meet. They're humorous, they're courageous, they're wise beyond their years. They can teach you so much. And it's a wonderful thing if you can go over and spend time with them. And Tariq, one day, my brother, one day we will be free. You will be free, and we'll all be spending time in the one state one state where everybody is over there under your rules. We can have shisha, we can have coffee, we can have minted tea, but everything will be equal rights. And that's what it has to be. And nothing even close to being under that is acceptable. But we
And
all have
that's
to work together to do something.
and that's the hope that Awdah spoke of. You know, we have to have hope and confidence that this will happen eventually. This is the eventuality of things. Injustice never lasts forever. And to your point, Rob, as well, I mean, we should be caring. At least if we don't want to be caring, we should, you know, stop our government being complicit and involved in arming this genocide, in arming this apartheid, in arming this war crimes that are happening day in, day out. We provide them with diplomatic, social, military cover every single day. And it's annoying because those guys we elected in offices.
And silence is complicit. I mean, if people choose to do nothing, that actually is the decision. That's still a decision, and you have to live with that. But like you say, in Australia, we send parts over for the F-35 that help the bombs come out. And our government was saying, oh, you know, it doesn't really matter because it doesn't do a lot. I mean, that's their mentality. Oh, it's okay then, is it? Right. Why don't you go over there while they're using these bombs and see how, you know, it works? So, yeah, we can all do those. We can all do something.
And for those listening from overseas, not from Australia, you just want to have a little bit insight of how ridiculous our government is. Our foreign minister is saying they are not sending weapons; they're sending non-lethal weapon parts. So that's for the last.
That's the official press release.
Yeah, that was the official statement from our foreign minister. I want to go back to you, Tariq, and talking about this last question before I go to the audience with Q&A. Very briefly, if you will, I also want to ask you, Andrey and Robert, how do we achieve justice and accountability? What can we do in our capacity as Australians here to achieve justice in Al-Khair for Awdah?
Yeah, this is a very important question. And for myself, I would say I will be the most loyal, and I would even take the oath to be loyal to Audah's blood, to my Uncle Salim's blood, to all the Palestinian martyrs that they have been killed by the Israeli occupation. And I will keep speaking about the situation, the truth of our reality, of our daily reality that we live. And I'll keep educating, I will keep advocating until eventually we get our freedom, inshallah. And I want to urge everyone to really listen, just to listen to Awdah, listen to Audah's words. Awdah was a person who planted hope from the midst of the darkness. And he's a person that he dedicated his life on really raising awareness and making people care. So it's all start when you care. If you care, you will change, and that's how we will do it. And I want to ask you for a few minutes that I want to honor my friend Awdah with, and I want to read this poem that I wrote for him. And I just informed by a friend that Watan, his son, his oldest son, is watching us through the screen. He doesn't understand English, but I want to say in English, Watan, I promise you, I'll be the most loyal to your father, will continue. I'll try my best that you get a better future, you and all of the Palestinian children. And here is the poem that I made for Awdah. I wrote here, Awdah, the return. Awdah, your name means return. And though the earth has taken your form, your spirit returns back to us like the dawn that follows every storm. You were struck down by terrorist hands, by fascist occupation and blind, yet no bullet can erase your truth, nor silence the echo you left behind. Your steps walk still among our fields, your voice still calls beneath the sky. You live within the olive trees, you breathe in every child's cry. Awdah, you will return as courage. You will return as hope that will not fade. You will return as light for every heart, as strength in the soil our hands have laid. The soil drinks your sacrifice. The soil drinks your sacrifice, yet it blossoms with the seeds you have sown. For every martyr taken from us, for you, for Uncle Suleiman, becomes a root, a shield, a stone. You are not gone, beloved ones. You have only returned to stay, to guide our path, to guard our dreams, till justice rises with the day.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Tariq. And I'm really glad to hear. Yeah, go on, Rob.
Nice statement. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Indeed, beautiful words. And I'm
Thank
glad to hear that Watan is actually listening. Salamat Watan. And I really want to encourage everyone to put in questions for us to address in a bit.
I just want to say something just briefly. It's very hard for us to explain the difficulty it is for the Palestinians to live under an occupation, because the occupation has its tentacles in absolutely everywhere, and it's mucking around with their lives, and the occupation wants them to be fearing the occupation, and that's why they continually do. I don't think people realize that Tariq, where he lives and where the settlement is, it's like your next door neighbor here. It's so close. It's just there. And then they'll have days where they'll get these bulldozers and they'll do 9,000 trees in a day. 9,000 olive trees in a day or overnight. It's mind-boggling. And I know that if someone has only a small amount of knowledge to do with Palestine, you won't quite understand how horrible and heinous and sick an occupation is. But I love you, brother. And I feel for you. And you too, Andre, too, because I know you're doing such a good work, and you know all of these guys really well, and you surround yourself and you put yourself on the line. You guys you've got to be commended. So.
Absolutely. And you don't forget to mention that those settlers are actually armed, and
not just armed either. They've got M16s too. Uzis, they got I couldn't believe when I used to see them running with M16s. I mean, crazy.
Yeah. People don't understand or can't imagine the situation there, no matter how hard they try, but they just keep suspecting what the Palestinians are saying. It's unbelievable, like how hard we need to try to actually tell people that's the actual situation. And thank you for mentioning the word Honda, the Honda bulldozers, Tariq. This is something that we can work around. The boycott campaigns, boycotting all these brands that are empowering the occupation. I don't know what you think, Andre, but what are these practical steps that we can do here in the West to achieve accountability and justice, not just for Awdah, just for the whole system of oppression?
This is a very good question. It's a question that is asked of me, and I'm sure of Tariq and of many people. What can we do all the time? And it should be asked all the time. And I think that looking at the things that have been happening across the world in regards to Palestine now, and in general in regards to, say, the ICE abductions in the United States and the rise of the far right in Europe and whatever, we're seeing things being done that are more effective and less effective. And I think that the method of sort of the approach that has been the main strategy for the past maybe 100 years is peaceful demonstration. People would come out onto the streets and demand that their government does something. And I think that lately, in the past few years, this has shown to have become completely ineffective. If not completely ineffective, almost completely ineffective. And we see that the things that are actually leading to material change is things that are actually disruptive. What we saw in Germany a couple of days ago with the storming of the Elbit Systems manufacturing facility in Ulm, we've seen similar actions happen in the UK. We see the Sumud Freedom Flotilla now. These are all physical, tangible things that are having a physical effect on the reality on the ground. And that is so much more powerful than to just come out into the street and ask that your government does something. Your government will do nothing. Your government is happy that this is happening. Your government is making money from this. Your government does not care about the lives of the Palestinians. And it's you know, what actually works on the ground is things that are having a physical impact. So the recommendation that I would give to everybody watching this from abroad is Google Direct Action.
Nice.
Absolutely. And I echo that sentiment. Disruption and civil disobedience is, I think, the way to go from now on, because we've been flooded the streets every single week and nothing is working. Did you want to comment on that, Rob or Tariq, before we go?
No, I agree. Absolutely. It's time that we're really going to shake the cage. I still think the protests, they still have value. They still have things that, families can go and do, all of that sort of thing. They're getting bigger. It puts pressure. But yes, we have to be doing action. And, that's the only way now, because that's the next level where we have to go. So the things like the flotilla at the moment, that the new Sumud flotilla is looking like it's going to do some big business. That Israelis don't know what to do, and that's sort of the thing we need to do. Everything that confuses them. So
absolutely disrupting this war machine that is connected to, entrenched in everything, really. I mean, that report from Francesca Albanese is just sobering. Yeah, Tariq, please go on.
Yeah, I wanted to add to all of that also sanctions should be implemented and should be made against those settlers, against those ministers who support those settlers in this government, that they are continuing to do what they are doing. And very important thing, because it's all related, something important to mention here, that Yanoun's company, it's a company that was involved in demolishing homes in Gaza. So it's all connected. What is happening to the Palestinians in Gaza, in the West Bank, to us here in Al-Khair, everywhere, it's all connected. I want to encourage the people, urge them to pressure their representatives, their countries, to implement sanctions and to do physical action so they can change. And we are demanding the basic of security, safety, protection. We are far away from justice, freedom, liberation. We are just calling for safety, protection, which would come with sanctions and with physical action.
Absolutely. I do want to go to the first question. For me, that first question is quite provocative, and I'll probably elaborate on that. I can, but I do want to go to you first, Tariq. How do we talk about coexistence at the moment between the Palestinians and Israelis? I mean, is there ways that we can talk about coexistence and peace?
I mean, now with the genocide taking place in Gaza and another, genocide that's coming, along in the West Bank, it's hard to talk about coexistence. And I believe this government that is ruling now, it's even putting, because, Andrey himself is now an Israeli activist, is putting also Israeli people who want to have peace with Palestinians, they are putting them in danger, and really are putting them in making them hard times, and really even destroying their lives. So it's now we should, all stand against this very extremist government ministers, and they should be taken away and stop, the genocide in Gaza and the similar situation, not similar, not there's no comparison at all, but a very hard situation in the West Bank. To stop that first, then we can talk about something like that.
Absolutely. I mean, this Zionist innately violent ideology does not distinguish between Jewish or Christian or Muslim in Palestine. People don't understand that. I mean, Andre, can we talk about coexistence? I mean, Tariq mentioned the government, the Israeli government. What about the society? Is it ready to coexist and live peacefully with the Palestinians?
I think coexistence is a massive obfuscation of what is actually going on in Palestine. There is this sort of European liberal understanding that, oh, the Israeli-Palestinian so-called conflict is that there are two sides that are, and there is so much hatred between them, and they're fighting, and how do we, in order to solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, we need to just make these two sides finally love each other and stop hating each other and so on. And this is the coexistence narrative. But I tell you, if you click your fingers right now and make it so that every Palestinian and every Israeli suddenly love each other, this is not going to fix anything. Because the problem here is not mutual hatred of two equal sides. The problem here is that everything is under one system of suppression, of apartheid, of dispossession, which puts one type of people at the top and one type of people at the bottom. The Israeli society, it's not really relevant to what extent the Israeli society is ready for coexistence or not ready for coexistence. I don't know. When Tariq and I sit down, we don't need to talk about coexistence. We don't need to solve some problems. We're clearly on the same side, despite the fact that we're different, I don't know, ethnicity, different mother tongue, different religion. We don't have that. We don't run into that problem because the problem is not existing together. The problem is that there is one overarching system, which is, a system of dispossession that we all need to fight against. So when Tariq and I sit down, we talk about how we can co-resist that system together, with all our differences dissolve in our common fight against the system.
It's important to talk about co-resistance and as opposed to coexistence and normalization. To that point, it's really important. We did a conversation with Ronnie Barkan, and he was, fantastic in explaining the difference. Rob, what are your thoughts on coexistence and peace?
Well, I don't think it's a conversation at this stage. I just don't. I think, Israel needs to be held to account. The polls in Israel are too leaning towards continuing on in Gaza. They're having their protests, but it's not about the Palestinians. They're protesting about their own hostages. They're not, worried about the Palestinians at the moment. I think the world needs to step in, and they need to be held to account. They need to stop and be held to account before anything can even talk about that. Because as Andre says too, there's not two sides here. There's one. There's one just exterminating the other, and the other one needs to be held to account, put back in its place, and then prove that it's ready to be a part of society. Other than that, there's no conversation.
Absolutely. I mean, some commentators in the Israeli society are actually going so far and comparing the current Zionist society with the Nazi regime that was in the 40s. And, back then, no one was proposing coexistence or peace with the Nazis. So that's probably my argument there. So the next question is for you, Tariq and Andre. So it says, it seems like the loss Palestinians are experiencing is relentless. How do you and Palestinians generally manage the grief amidst the constant work you have to do towards your own survival and your own families as well? So Tariq, I mean, how do you grieve or mourn?
Yeah, we are actually not even allowed to mourn, peacefully, I would say. Really, it's our life is about resistance, resisting in getting water, resisting in mourning your beloved, ones, and even like it's like a battle for survival here. It gets to that level, So really, I don't know how to answer this question. It's really difficult for me, but what I know that I'm alive, and I have to every day wake up and fight for for my life that day. Really, it gets to that level.
What about you, Andre?
So I think just existing here in this land does constant damage to your sanity, to your mental health, to your physical health, and it happens through your loss of loved ones, through all the settler attacks and harassment, and also through more invisible things. As Robert said, there is like 1,000 crimes that Israel commits, down to just like the checkpoints. There are checkpoints that are active all the time, and you know, to get from point A to point B, it's insane. And it does also actual damage to you. And how do you cope with that? I don't know how you cope with that. Yeah, for me, I haven't been here for nearly as long as obviously Tarek and people who were born here and grew up here, grew up under this. I ended up here sort of accidentally a few years ago, and once I saw what is going on, like Robert, like it's just completely blew my mind, and I realized that like, okay, I cannot sit here and do nothing. You have to do something. And so I think one day we will all have to deal with the damage that the occupation have done to us internally, and with the destroyed psyche that we all have. But until then, at least for me, I just choose to continue doing what I'm doing, continue working, and continue fighting. And I will deal with what it has done to me personally after it's over, one way or the other.
And it boils down to that question. I mean, Kim is also asking that question. I mean, is it the only way that we can help practically is to actually go to Al-Khair as part of this protective presence? Is that useful? Can anybody do that? I mean, Rob, what do you think? Would you encourage that?
Yeah, I would. I think it makes a big difference. People like Andrey there, he keeps the Palestinians slightly safer, slightly, but not a lot. You know, they might choose to pull the trigger to someone, 200 meters away instead, but they'll still slightly. I've always wanted people to go as a group, like the flotilla, but as a group to go in there as people observing, to wear jackets. But if you go in there and you say that you're going to go into the West Bank and the occupied West Bank, and the chances if you're with a group, well, half the group's not going to get in. It's as simple as that. That's just the way they operate, so it makes it difficult. But, rather than peacekeepers, there are people that walk around Hebron that have cameras, and they have limited success, I think, in the fact that they are and they're independent, I think does help. So, yes, if you're in a position, go. Possibly not today. It's probably not the safest time to go, but I would love to see a delegation of 50 of them going there and doing what Andrey does. Would be beautiful.
This is absolutely a great initiative and a great idea.
But there's ISM and there's those other ones there, and I just think it's time for a reformed one. I think that would be very powerful.
Yes, there's International Solidarity Movement. There is the Faza as well. I think that's another version of it, where activists can actually go and help with the community.
It'll change you forever. It will change you forever. So, in a good way, and you'll make lifelong friends, and you'll be contributing to society and contributing to helping. So it would be a wonderful thing.
It's an incredible experience, because things we take for granted here, like water, food, electricity, transport, that it's not existent in there. Even in Gaza, before the genocide, electricity was 4 hours a day. Can you believe living your life without a fridge for 20 hours?
Yep, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's really crazy. I mean, before we conclude today, I'm really grateful to your time, but I wanna finish with you, Tariq, if there's any message or any call to action you want us to do to help the community in Al-Khair.
Yeah, I want to start from last, point is about protective presence. Yes, it's highly needed, and it's it helps. As we say, like the Arabic proverb, الغريق يتعلق بقشة. The one who's drowning, he would catch a straw to save his life, and that's how we would see the protective presence nowadays. Yes, we in a big need of activists, people who carry the privileges and they have their governments, they have their people who care about them. And if their blood will be spoiled, it would be, unfortunately, more, important, than our blood. So I would urge people, to come visit first, in delegations, really to see the fact by their own eyes. And also, if they can, and it needs sacrifice. Nothing comes, with, here with, as we say, flowers. It comes with, bad, Andy himself, he was, attacked, arrested, tortured, kidnapped many times. So it needs courage of people to stand and come and stand with us. Yes, and yeah, I want to tell everyone my last message, that never ever forget Awdah or the Palestinian people, because the Palestinian cause is the cause of the oppressed people everywhere. It could have been another people, and I would really find myself taking an action for that people, and try to uplift, their situation, and stand for them and resist for them to change their situation. And as always, being said, no one is free until the Palestinians are free.
Absolutely, well said. Rob, did you want to add to that? You were not.
I completely would love to end on Tariq's words, because it's so true. And I can tell you one thing about the Palestinians: there's nothing that they wouldn't do for you. When I was over there, they were worried about my safety, not their safety. They were worried about me being eating rather than them eating. They were always worried about other people. They care about other people. And all they want from people is people to tell the world the truth about them. They don't want the charity. They just want the world to know the truth. And it's a very powerful thing. And it was a beautiful thing getting told that all over Palestine. So, the Palestinians are the best people on earth.
Because that truth has been confiscated and obfuscated for
Yep.
decades and decades intentionally by this educational system. Last word, Andrey, what's your message?
Yeah, just to continue what Robert said, that is absolutely true. I've never had this much hospitality as I had in Palestine from Palestinians. People who know full well that I'm Jewish, that I have Israeli passport, who have had family members murdered by Israelis and by the occupation and by settlers, who will welcome you into their home and give you the last of the maybe some of the poorest people will give you their last things just to make you feel welcome. And it just makes you, imagine just how horrible the Zionist movement must have been to the Palestinians to be rejected by the society, which is based on ultimate hospitality. And it needs to be, as Robert and Tarek said, yeah, you can come here. You can come here through the International Solidarity Movement, or through UCPIP, or through many other organizations that are functioning on the ground. It may not be, as Robert said, the safest right now. So, you need to weigh the situation. It is dangerous. It is difficult. You have to cross borders. You have to be in situations where people get shot. So it's a choice that you have to make for yourself. But this is not obviously the only thing you can do is just physically come to Palestine. Right now, you can have more of an impact when you are abroad. If you come here, all we can do on the ground is record, is talk about it, is try to reduce the amount of violence on the ground in each specific case, which works less and less. But when you are abroad, you can have an impact on the actual funding of the genocide in Gaza and of the ethnic cleansing in the West Bank, which is more important. This is how it's going to stop. It's not going to stop from the inside. It's not going to stop because of a sudden change in Israeli society. It has been brainwashed for decades. Everyone here gets fed this insane story from kindergarten until the army, until university. It's there will be no internal change. The only change that can happen will come from the boycotts from divestment, from sanctions, from direct action. It needs to come from abroad. So, and everyone has a role to play in this. We're on the ground and you outside.
100%. And I also add to that, from where we are organizing, we need to do that collectively. To your point, Robert, if you want to do impact, I think we should work together as a group, as an organization. If you're alone, you're ineffective. If you're in a group, you have more power, you have more influence. So I echo all these sentiments. I also want to let everyone know that today's session was free to attend, and donations were open, and people really donated generously. So I want to thank everyone who donated.
Fantastic.
The money will definitely go to Awdah's small family and his 3 children, Watan, Kanaan, and Muhammad. The recording of this video will be uploaded online, and the link will be sent out to everyone who attended or not attended as well. If anybody has missed out on donating for Awdah's family, we're going to start a Chuffed fundraiser account, and we're going to circulate it to people who registered for this event. On that note, thank you very much again, and I hope we can do more of these sessions to inform the Australian public.
Free Palestine.
Thanks, Andrey. Free Palestine.
Palestine.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.